Yes, so real quick, housekeeping. Childcare is available in the back room. Please keep a mask on throughout, being in here in the office, just for, COVID protections and precautions. We have one bathroom in the front room, which is right here on the left. And yes, snacks and water are available. Pizza will be arriving at 7:30, so folks are hungry. And if you would like to eat, please step outside. Is there?
Yeah, just the front.
Okay, just up there. Just talk to us about grabbing food and eating outside. Next slide, please. All right, so we're gonna go through the agenda, but before we do, knowing that it is again Wednesday evening, raining outside, and in order to really build community power, we need to be energized. So I want y'all to follow along with me for this chant, because we need that sort of like optimism to come together, to be powerful, to really express the energy and the power that's within us that we're gonna need in order to fight these struggles and in order to win together. So I have a chant, and it goes like this. Mass evictions, that ain't right. Housing is a human right. Mass evictions, that ain't right. Housing is a human right. Mass evictions, that ain't right. Housing is a human right. All right, so one more time, and this time I really want y'all to feel it, like I gotta feel it in my chest when y'all say it, all right? All right, let's go. Mass evictions, that ain't right. Housing is a human right. That's right, so this is how we're gonna win. This is how we're gonna come together, because that's sort of what I just felt in my chest coming from y'all, coming from the energy, is what we gotta feel the state feel. So when I hear you guys say this, I feel energized. When the state hear it, they're gonna be scared. When the neglectful and abusive landlords, they're gonna be scared. That's the sort of type of energy we gotta bring to the people that are evicting our families and evicting our communities. So, the agenda for tonight, we're gonna start with introductions, basically introducing who we are as the Boston Liberation Center and who we are as Council of the Rents. We're gonna review the timeline of how we got here throughout, this crisis caused by COVID and neglect by the government. And then we're gonna talk about the petition that we're gonna be going around and the outreach that we're gonna be organizing with you guys throughout your neighborhoods to really get people on board and coming together to fight. And then at the end, we're gonna have an open forum discussion where we really get to learn more about like all our struggles that we're going through and really just get to know each other on a deeper level. And obviously closing remarks at the very, very end. So once again, thank y'all for coming. And please welcome Rachel, who's gonna give us introductions and welcome.
That was great energy, thank you. We can go to the next slide. So just to welcome you all, this is the Boston Liberation Center. It is a new working class community center here in Roxbury. It's seeking to be an education and organizing hub for our working class communities in Boston, all of us right here in Boston. We just launched on August 21st, maybe saw some of y'all there. But moving forward, we're gonna be housing various organizations and campaigns like Cancel the Rents Boston, and creating a space where our organizing and our education for our collective future can really thrive. So just to speak a little bit about Cancel the Rents Boston, we're part of a national campaign that's really trying to pressure the government to create a stronger eviction moratorium and also to fight against evictions and ultimately get the relief we need, which is a full cancellation of rents, mortgages, and all accumulated rent debt that people have accrued throughout this crisis, because we know even if we have the eviction moratorium keeping us from being evicted, what are we going to do about all these back months of rent? People haven't been able to pay their rent for over a year now. Where are we just going to get that money from? That's why we're demanding a full cancellation of rents and mortgages and that rent debt. So we can go to the next slide. Jack, could you go to the next slide? Thanks. So as Daniel sort of alluded to, the reason we're here tonight is because last week the Supreme Court ended the eviction moratorium, the federal eviction moratorium. which is now leaving 11 million people nationwide at risk of being evicted, straight up, like already in motion. And we're here to build that community power right here in Boston, build this national movement here locally, fight against evictions, and keep our community safe in the face of this struggle. So just to get everyone acquainted with each other, wanted to start with some round robin introductions where people can just go around and sort of weave through the crowd, say maybe your name, your neighborhood, how you heard about this community meeting, and we have a check-in question. If you could say maybe 1 to 2 words that come to mind when you think of housing justice, what does that mean to you in 1 to 2 words? So I can get us started. Again, my name is Rachel. I live right here in Roxbury in these couple streets. I am a volunteer organizer with the Boston Liberation Center in Cancer Threats Boston. That's how I heard about it. And 1 to 2 words, when I think of housing justice, I think of people power, because the only way we're going to get housing justice is when we come together and fight for it. I'll pass it. Daniel, you go ahead, and then we can pass it off that way.
Well, once again, my name is Daniel, organizing right here in Roxbury. And 1 word that I think of when I think of housing justice, well, 2 words. Well, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and do 3 words. Peace of mind.
Maybe we could just do this side
Yeah,
and
that's
then
fine.
go to this side.
Yeah, I can go next. Hi, I'm Casey. Right now I live in Needham. I heard about this event because I'm in the process of joining the PSL. And when I think about housing justice, I think about community care.
My name is Joey. I'm from Dorchester here, and I guess we're in Roxbury now. And I heard about this event through Nino, who I've seen do different community work, and wanted to check out the space. And 1 to 2 words for housing justice is, one thing just comes to my mind is just safety, just like everybody's personal safety. Yeah.
Alright, I'm Julia, recently moved to Roxbury. My friend Flo has heard about this, and I'm gonna use 3 words too, supporting marginalized people.
Awesome. Hey everybody, my name's Andrew. I live in East Boston, and I am a restaurant server and union organizer. And when I hear about housing justice, I think about the people that do the work to make other people rich in the city being able to actually live in the city.
Let's get you so you
Hi,
don't
my
get
name
wet.
is Shama. My pronouns are she, they, and sha. Sha is a gender neutral pronoun, Filipino gender neutral pronoun. I heard about this event because of my boyfriend. I don't really live here. I'm from the Philippines, and I just really wanted to understand how community organizing works in the U.S. because I'm also a organizer in the Philippines myself, but for queer women's rights specifically. I think the 1 to 2 words that come to mind when I hear about housing justice is just like 1 word. Actually, it's more like it's basic. It's like, how can you not think about it?
My name is Whitney. I am on the Northeastern's campus, and I heard about this event because I'm also friends with Flo, who is an organizer here. And 1 to 2 words, I guess. I think I might steal someone's because it's been a long day, sober and slow. But I loved community care. I think that was a really, really good 2 words to describe that.
My name is Lloyd. I'm from Malden, and I'm also from the Boston May Day Coalition. And I also heard about this event through PSL. And one thing I think about the situation in general is people should get like the right. People should get like fair amount of care.
Hi,
No, you go first.
hi, I'm Bree. I'm an organizer with the Boston Liberation Center. I'm a restaurant owner as well. And I guess just tenant rights. Really
Filipino, he, their pronouns, in Dorchester, and when I think of housing justice, I think of socialism, public ownership of everything, so that we wouldn't have, that is housing justice, socialism. That's it.
Hi, I'm Jack, they them pronouns, also an organizer with the VLC, and when I think of housing justice, I think of security. I'll pass it over there.
Yeah, Yesenia, they them. I'm an organizer with Council X Boston, and when I think of housing justice, I think of true affordability.
Hi all, I'm Sophia, use they them pronouns. I live in Jamaica Plain and I'm an organizer with the Boston Liberation Center. In 2 words I think about when I hear housing justice is fighting back.
Hi, I'm Anna, and I live in Jamaica Plain, and I heard about this event from, I teach in the Boston Teachers in Boston, and someone in the Housing Justice Committee told us that we should get here to see how our committee can help out. Housing justice, what all people and our students need. Very similar. I'm Anne. I live in Brookline and teach in East Boston. I also heard about this through another member of the BTU Housing Justice Committee, Cecil, and I would say housing justice to me means stability.
Hi, my name is Malika, and I live in Mattapian, and I work at Buffalo Wild Wings, and I heard about this group I met them at the Juneteenth cookout, and for housing justice is to be equal together, equal of race to live together.
Hi, my name is Kat, she, her pronouns. I heard about this event because I'm an organizer with the PSL. And when I think of housing justice, I think of accessibility.
Hi, my name is Nessa. I'm a community advocate. I heard about this through PSL, and when I think about housing justice, I think about rent control.
Hi, my name is Jared. He, series pronouns. I live in the South End. I'm also an organizer with Boston Liberation Center. And for housing justice, I think of stable and affordable.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Joe. I use he, him pronouns. Live here in Roxbury, and I'm an organizer with Cancel Rents Boston. And yeah, when I think of housing justice, I think of kind of similar to what Daniel said, just like no stress. I don't know, so many people we talk to, just you go home and it's like you're consumed by issues with bad conditions or being behind on rent. It's like that should be the place where you can go and feel safe and secure.
Hi everyone, I'm Flo, they, them pronouns. I'm also an organizer with Cancel Rents Boston, and similar to what Joe said, what comes to mind when I think of housing justice is protecting homes, just kind of understanding that the home and is really affects every aspect of your life, and if that's not secure, nothing else really is. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. It's nice to meet you all. I'm gonna pass it over to Joe.
Put a timer on for myself. If we go to the next slide. Yeah, so before we get into some discussion about like how we actually fight, think we could start off by talking about how we got into the situation that we're in right now. And just from a show of hands, who here feels like it's easy to keep track of government policies around housing, like all these moratoriums and get rent relief and all that kind of stuff? Anyone think it's easy? All right, no one raise their hand. So yeah, I think that's really the purpose of going through this section, is to understand like what are the different loops that we had to go through, that the government is making us go through since the start of the pandemic, and then what situation does that put us in right now? And then from there, we can know how to fight and what our moves are moving forward. So if you go to the next slide, please. So we're just gonna take it all the way back to March 2020, which is when Governor Baker announced the state of emergency here in Massachusetts. And this is a photo from the press conference. What sticks out to me is no one is even wearing a mask at this event. So you can see, like back in March, we knew really nothing about coronavirus, and what we did know was being ignored by public officials. And very shortly after the state of emergency, all the schools in Boston shut down, jobs shut down, and a lot of people lost work. If we go to the next slide, please. So in April 2020, which is the next month, one of the major developments was the state of Massachusetts put a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, which we'll talk about a little bit later, like comparing the state moratorium to the federal one that was put in place and has now been overturned. But also, I think it's really important to note that in April 2020, this is a chart that shows the workforce in Massachusetts, and it was at its lowest point in April 2020. And even though there's been some recovery, it hasn't recovered back to where things were at pre-COVID. And also, show of hands, can you raise your hand if either you or a loved one have been impacted in your job situation by COVID-19? Looks like most people in the room either directly impacted or have a loved one who is impacted, and that's really the case that has set up a situation where people are falling behind on the necessities of life, as we know. So if we go to the next slide, please. So in that same month, there was a national campaign launched, Cancel the Rents, which Rachel was talking about a little bit earlier, because we saw a situation where millions of people across the country were not able to work, but their rents were not going to be changed. And even before the pandemic, rents were too high and pay was too low. So we knew that it was going to create a situation that was, potentially explosive, where millions of people were at risk for eviction. And Massachusetts had passed a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, but many states had not. So we mobilized in 40 cities all across the country in April, and we were doing car caravans because we still didn't know that much about the virus. People weren't protesting in the streets like they were over the summer. And so we were doing car caravans all across the country. If you go to canceltherents.org, you can see some of the video footage of those protests. We did car caravans in April, May, June, and then December exploded with the uprising against police brutality, which kind of threw a wrench in things or just adapted the struggle. But yeah, just want to give some background on the national campaign. Next slide, please. So then this is an important part where we have September and October 2020. So in September, the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, created a national moratorium on evictions. And then in October, the next month, Governor Baker allowed the Massachusetts moratorium to expire. So if you look at it, you might think, oh, well, even though the Massachusetts one expired, there's still one in place at the national level, so everything is cool, everything's copacetic. But does anybody know the difference between these two moratoriums? Or there's a few differences, but anyone know any of the differences between them? Really good.
Is they're protesting against housing of justice, so the eviction won't expire, and then the other one is just expiring the eviction, and want people to be like stuck in a pandemic and have nowhere to go, get kicked out.
Yeah, for sure. So this was a protest in Chelsea. People were protesting up to the last minute.
Get their house back.
Yeah, get their house back or make sure that they don't lose their homes. Anyone else have any ideas about like the differences between the state moratorium that was in place in Massachusetts and the CDC moratorium that was at a national level? No, shout it out. Daniel?
Yeah, so I remember correctly, the Massachusetts moratorium had stronger protections. It was actually stopping all evictions and foreclosures in the state. But the national, moratorium was not necessarily a preemptive, I guess, way of approaching the issue, because tenants had to prove that they've been affected by COVID in order to be protected under it, and they have to be trying their best to pay their rent. So, for example, they have to apply for RAFT, and they have to prove that they apply for RAFT, and then a landlord could still go up to a judge to challenge that. So it was a whole process. It was weaker both in scope and in depth.
Yeah, exactly. So the Massachusetts moratorium, well, one, it protected homeowners against moratoriums, against foreclosures, which the federal one didn't do. But like Daniel was saying, like housing court was basically shut down between April and October in Massachusetts. You couldn't even file an eviction unless it was like for a cause, right? Like if you're saying someone committed a crime in your home, then there were some exceptions. But for the most part, it was in like the single digits per month of how many evictions were being filed. Since this moratorium in Massachusetts expired between like October and the springtime, there was already thousands of evictions that were filed in Boston and in Massachusetts, and people have been losing their homes. So even though there was a federal moratorium in place, people were being legally evicted, and then there are also people who are being illegally evicted by their landlords. If we go to the next slide, please. So this is when Cancel the Rents Boston, we decided to really ramp up our organizing locally and really get out there in the streets, going door to door in the neighborhoods, making sure that people knew about the local moratorium expiring, knew about how to apply for their rights with the federal moratorium, and also knew that we were willing to fight back, right? Fight back against landlords who are trying to take advantage of people in a moment of crisis. So you can see us posted up outside the Boston Liberation Center. That was before it was publicly open, but we were using it to gather materials, meet outside, go door to door, and really try to deal with the community, because we could see that the level of protections were decreasing, and the way that things were trending, it was only going to get worse. So next slide, please. And then in December was when the federal moratorium was supposed to expire for the first time, which is also holiday times, which is extremely cruel to make people worry about potentially having to get an eviction notice during this time. And this is when the federal government started playing games and making it very difficult for people who, just us as tenants, but also us as organizers, because we're trying to understand how to adapt to the situation, how to respond. And then so in like December 31st, they're like, okay, actually we're not gonna have the moratorium expire. We're gonna push it back to January. And then in late January, they pushed it back to March. And then in March, they pushed it back to June. And then in June, they pushed it back to July. So we can see, like, month by month, they're playing games, not actually creating a plan for how we're gonna get out of this crisis, but just kicking the can down the road slowly, really because they were hoping that COVID would just like magically go away. Has not happened, but anyway, I think it's just important for us to know, like, this is what the government response has been, and the way they're kind of just dangling people's lives with no regard. Next slide, please. All right, then to zoom forward a few months into March 2021, the federal government committed an additional $400 million for rental relief in Massachusetts. They had already allocated $400 million before that, and then the state itself had allocated $200 million. So in total, it's nearly $1 billion that exists in rental relief funds here in Massachusetts. Has anybody have any experience trying to apply for rental assistance or helping anybody apply? Yesenia, could you talk a little bit about what that's like?
Yeah, so I'm a case manager. That's what I do for my paid work. So I had a panel of about 40 people that I was assisting who were either experiencing homelessness or lived in Section 8 housing. And I can tell you that I had maybe 2 people out of the 40 that I was assisting actually received RAF funding. We applied in 2020, so around like holiday time, and the first person who received actual assistance was February of this year.
Yeah, and this chart shows it, right? You can't see the text, but the blue lines are the number of households who have applied to RAP every month. So it starts in January 2021, it goes through June 2021. That's the number of households that have applied. The red is the number of households that are rejected every month. And then the yellow is closeouts, so they just don't respond, they just close the case. They don't even tell if you're accepted or rejected. So literally 90% of applications for rental relief in the state are rejected. So we're told that we have $1 billion available, and really they've paid out about 20% of that, and most people are never gonna see any type of relief. So I just want us to all keep in mind, like, we know what the unemployment situation has been, now we know what the rental relief situation has been, and it's all going to create a very toxic and explosive situation. So next slide, please. And then in July, as we go towards the end, President Biden actually allowed the eviction moratorium to expire. Congress went on vacation. They just said, see ya, like, we'll deal with y'all later, we'll be back in a couple months. And there was actually only one congressperson who actually stayed behind, Cori Bush, and she helped lead a sit-out or sit-in outside of the Capitol, and there was protests all across the country, not just in Washington, D.C., but against this decision by President Biden to just put 11 million people across the country at risk of losing their homes. And if we go to the next slide, just a few days later, Biden reversed his decision and said, okay, actually people are getting pretty mad. I'm gonna put a new moratorium in place. And then a few weeks later after that, August 26th, the Supreme Court declared that moratorium unconstitutional. And moratorium just means temporary ban. I should have said that before, but it means like it's a temporary ban on evictions. So as of August 26th, that federal protection that was in place, even though it was weaker than the protection we had previously had in Massachusetts, it was still something, and that got eliminated. And the Supreme Court said, preventing landlords from evicting tenants who breach their leases intrudes on the most fundamental elements of property ownership, the right to exclude. That's how they voted on the decision. So not talking about people's right to a home, but landlords' right to exclude people from that housing. And next slide, please. And then that brings us to today. We just went through like a year and a half in like 12 minutes, not bad. So yesterday, Mayor Janey actually announced that there's now going to be a Boston moratorium on evictions. There haven't been too many details about how that's gonna function yet. They haven't released like the actual order, but we'll keep following up on that. But I think it's also important to note that on September 6th, the unemployment benefits that people have been getting from the federal government are gonna be expiring. And in Massachusetts, that's 300,000 people that are gonna be losing benefits. And Biden has said that he's not gonna push for those to be extended. And I think that's important to mention in tandem with this moratorium, because as we've seen, like, we're creating an economic situation that is inescapable for people. Like, we're not gonna be able to pay off all this rent debt. It's billions of dollars that people have collected all across the country in rent debt. And these moratoriums, we support them because it stops people from being evicted, even if it doesn't protect everybody. So we support them, but we need to push for more, right? And we also need to push to be prepared for the time that these moratoriums are going to expire. Because if Mayor Janey is saying, COVID is bad right now, I'm going to put a moratorium in place. Again, when January 2022 comes and the moratorium is allowed to expire, we can't just be caught in a situation where we're not prepared to react, right? We're not prepared to protect our communities. And that's why it's so important for us to be here in meetings like this, doing outreach in our communities, bringing more people in, because you have to build the ship before the storm, right? So if you can go to the next slide, please. Just to close out, this is a picture from a cancel the rents protest in Washington, D.C., outside of the Supreme Court last Friday. And with all of that knowledge of the economic crisis and the lack of action, the lack of relief that's being provided by the government, we really see that, one, our task right now is showing solidarity with everyone who's at risk of eviction across the country. I'm sure most of us have friends, loved ones, family who live outside of Boston who are not protected by an eviction moratorium right now. But two, like I said, building the ship before the storm, really getting prepared so that when the time that the moratorium in Boston does expire, we're gonna be ready to build that people power, put that pressure on the state, like Daniel was talking about earlier. So I'm gonna wrap up there. Hopefully it was helpful to contextualize like how we got from March 2020 to now and the situation that we're in, and we'll talk about how we can fight it. And I'll pass it to Jared and Flo.
So, as Joe mentioned, people power, right? That's what I feel anyway, the only way in history that things actually gets done. We know that politicians don't have our best interests at heart. We know we have to constantly push them. So one of the ways we're going to start with tonight with organizing, as Joe said, but also is a petition. So Cancel the Rents Boston, we're circulating this, or part of a national petition with two main demands to Congress, which is one, return from their vacation. I think they take the whole month of August off actually, and take emergency action to ban evictions nationally. And also wipe clean all the rent and mortgage debt accumulated over the course of the pandemic. Because as we know, like so many people have lost their jobs, they've accumulated tens of thousands of dollars sometimes in rent, and it is just kicking the can down the road to have these moratoriums. As Joe said, we do support them, but it's not a real solution. It's like a Band-Aid. It's not getting at the heart of the problem. So next slide, please. So what is the purpose of petition gathering? We in Boston want to play our part in the national movement against evictions and to meet our neighbors like tonight, inform them about the current housing situation and get people involved. So we've been doing a lot of outreach the last few months all around the streets in this general perimeter of the Liberation Center, and it's gone really well. We've met a lot of neighbors, but we need to meet more. We need to grow our people power. So I do have a petition here tonight with a sign-up sheet. So Flo's gonna take over as we figure out how many people we can get, how many people we hope to get to sign. But we can start tonight. I can just sort of pass this around. There's a pen here. Okay. Are you able to, or you?
Sure, I can say.
Okay. Oh yeah, we need a Sharpie. Maybe a Sharpie for the wall? Oh, thank you.
Next slide, please. Yeah, so, to reiterate what others have mentioned before, people power is so important, and that's why we're starting with, building this petition and having people, learn about the issue this way. And so to start by kind of posing this question, I think one of our main goals tonight specifically is to, get community members to volunteer for outreach sessions and to join us in the kinds of door-to-door, street outreach, the kinds of things that we do to, get more petition signatures and get more people talking about this. And so I'm kind of posing this question: how many petition signatures do we think we can gather in the next 3 weeks, so that we can kind of collectively build our community goal for the petition, so that we kind of have something moving forward with that. But as of right now, we have about 100 signatures from the past, from the speak out that we did last Saturday in response to the Supreme Court decision. So that's where we're at right now. I'm just wondering what people are thinking about, how many petition signatures we think we can gather in 3 weeks' time, and what we think, could be a good goal for us to have. If anyone kind of wants to raise their hand or speak out or anything.
Well, like I mentioned, I work with people experiencing homelessness, and I think all of my coworkers would definitely be interested in signing this petition. So I work with about 500 people. I can guess that maybe at least 150 would be willing to sign a petition.
This is a quick question. Are there any residency requirements, or is it just Boston residents, or do you have to have an ID or something?
No, we're not asking people for ID or anything like
just
that.
Just a petition, anybody can sign.
Yeah, basically, definitely drawing from, we're talking to people in Roxbury, Dorchester, these surrounding areas, so it's definitely kind of the people that, we know that live in these areas and experience the issues in these areas, nothing like that. Does someone else have there?
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say about the door-to-door situation. I've done canvas before too. So you basically just knock on the door and basically just ask, if they're interested or not. It's up, to the person, really.
Yeah. So I can elaborate on that a little bit too. So the type of outreach that we do. So that's door-to-door knocking. We usually do that. We would do that on Saturday mornings, and either put flyers in mailboxes if people aren't at the door. Have conversations with people to tell them about the petition and cancel the rents and the national demands. And then we also do street outreach, which is more so just kind of talking to people in busy areas and trying to find hotspots in communities where a lot of people are walking through, and that's a great way to meet people and talk and stuff like that. So just kind of those are the types of avenues that we use for outreach. So we heard 150, we would have 100. How does a goal look 500 signatures?
Sounds good.
I feel like we could do more than that. I like your optimism.
Well, there's 20 people in this room, more than that, I think, probably. So I mean, 100 signatures per person is definitely a tall ask, but I feel like you could get to 1,000.
Yeah, I like 1,000. Yeah.
So, Flo, where am I writing a thought? At the top, right at the top. Okay, I wasn't sure. I think this is like when we're building, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is in 3 weeks.
Yes.
Great.
And then do you want to write 100 in the smallest?
Yeah,
one?
yeah,
'Cause that's where-
exactly. That's where we're starting.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think that's very doable. There's a lot of people here tonight. There's a lot of people that, we've already reached out to and talked to that have either shown interest or already signed the petition. We're at the demo. And so, yeah, I definitely think it's reasonable that, that we can each kind of get our signatures, and so that kind of leads me to the next point. Yeah, you can go to the next slide.
Yep.
Yeah, so then talking more in depth about what outreach would actually look like for us. In general, the goal for tonight, I think the best way to do it is probably to have the two groups just be the two sides of the room. To reintroduce yourselves. There's going to be sign-up sheets specifically for people to share their contact, the neighborhood that they reside in, each group will have a point person that's an organizer to kind of help with solidifying the plans and stuff. And this is kind of time for us to brainstorm like what the best strategies for outreach would be. Maybe if you know areas in your neighborhoods that are hotspots, or streets or neighbors that you would want to talk to or want to bring a petition to. This can be a time for us to kind of start building those conversations and connections with each other. So there'll be sign-up sheets for those for the two groups coming around. It can include, again, door-to-door, visiting busy areas or local organizations that you might have connections to as well, or, like Yesenia mentioned, people that they work with. So that's like another great way too. So I think we have about 10 minutes remaining on this point, so we can have time for people to reintroduce themselves and start having conversations. Me and Jared can be, or me and Yesenia can be point people for the two groups. Does that sound good with everyone? Awesome.
Should we maybe do like small semicircles?
Yeah, if you guys can kind of like turn in. Yeah.
We might be competing with the group. Sophia, can you click to the next slide?
Okay.
Can you click to the next slide? One more. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
We're doing the sign-ups right now, though, right?
I think we already did that. Oh, the
Sign-ups for organizing, yeah.
I don't know where those forms are.
You could just use us. Grab people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We gonna do introductions, though?
Yeah, well, thanks again for joining this meeting on a Wednesday night. So if we want to just reintroduce ourselves, I'm Yesenia. I'm an organizer with Cancel the Rent.
My name is Malika, and I am new to Cancel the Rents organization, and I'm also in a different group, Mass Adapter.
Hi, I'm Anna, and I'm a member of Boston Teachers Union's Housing Justice Group. I'm Ann, and same thing.
Sophia, I organize here in Boston Liberation. Kat, I'm an organizer with PSL.
I am Neza, and I'm just a community advocate.
I'm Jared. I'm an organizer with Boston Liberation Center.
Yeah, so before we get into the questions, we're gonna be signing up. If y'all are interested in doing some door-to-door outreach, or rather neighborhood outreach, just to get some petitions, and also to get people talking about what's happening with housing policy, or rather what's not happening with housing policy. Sometimes we'll run into people that don't even know that there's a moratorium on evictions, or who don't know that, for example, the Rockville, Dorchester, Mattapan areas in the city are facing like disproportionate amounts of evictions than the rest of Boston. So we can see like the legacies of racism that are occurring today. So yeah, if y'all are interested in signing up to do some outreach, I'd be your point person. It's not intimidating, honestly. No one's really rude to you.
Yeah. So just, sorry, you might not be able to read my bad handwriting, so just name, neighborhood, phone number, and if you're interested in like helping coordinate like the outreach itself, and you said they mentioned they could help with that coordination, so you wouldn't be on your own. Pass it to my left.
So would this be the neighborhood we live in, or where we want to, or where we'd like to?
I think that it would be good to know where your neighborhood is, so that I can figure out a central place for all of us to meet. We don't have to necessarily go to your neighborhood to do outreach, but just to help coordinate. Yeah, so while that form is being passed around, if you wanted to maybe answer one of the questions from the slide. So the first being, what's something that stood out to you from today's presentation? It could be something that you hadn't heard of before, something that was like appalling, or another thought that sparked for you, or the other question was, what can we do about what can we do in Boston to get organized to fight against the illegal evictions that are currently happening and the thousands of legal evictions that are happening once the local moratorium ends?
I've experienced things before many times.
Does anyone want to go first?
Yeah, I think it could be nice to like.
I can say something to the first thing that I am just like want to know more about the announcement that was made today or last night maybe. I know it's like a quickly developing situation, but how that's going to change after the election and just and how people use know their rights and use that as a protection. So yeah.
Does anyone want to speak on that?
Sure. So, from what I've read about Mayor Kim Janey's announcement yesterday, the city expects that there'll be legal challenges. So, who knows if the challenges will be successful or not, but it's precarious nonetheless. So, like has been said, like we support a moratorium, but we also know that there's unscrupulous landlords who prey on vulnerable tenants, undocumented tenants, people who maybe don't speak much English. So it's very easy to manipulate them and instill fear in them and get them to leave, So it's, like, again, it's great that we have the moratorium, but we don't know when it could really truly end. So that's kind of like from what I've read most. The other, to answer your question, you seen to the first one, what stood out for me was the graph that Joe showed, where out of $1 billion, I think it's less than 20% has been distributed, and that's in the funds. I mean, it's
just to like play around a little bit with it, because we're going to need folks to sign up if they want to coordinate their own kind of like outreach outing, if they're willing to do more than just outreach, but actually coordinate. So I'm going to
the second question for me about fighting illegal evictions. I think one of the things that can help. Sorry, I knew we were going to be competing. Maybe we should have gone to the other room, but I think one of the things that can help prevent illegal evictions is really like outreaching to our neighbors. I don't know about y'all, but I think I just moved into a new spot. I already met my first floor neighbors and my across the street neighbors, and I feel like I'm comfortable enough to be able to talk to my first floor neighbor who speaks only Spanish, like, about this issue, right? Not everybody knows that just because you get a notice to quit, it doesn't mean that you leave your home. It has to go through the court. So we say all the time, like, only a judge can evict you, but it's still intimidating.
There's a process,
Yeah, it's still intimidating to get that form in the mail. It's scary because it says order to quit, eviction 14 days.
And what people should realize too, when you go to regular district court, you should always appeal in the housing court. Because a lot of landlords take you to district court where the judge will okay it, but if you take it to the housing court, it's a much longer process. A lot of people don't know that.
For question 2, we can send the landlord a letter about not kicking the people out of their homes. If they kick the people out of their homes, they can lose their homes.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's very true actually. You gotta coordinate the tenant and the landlord to get RAF funds.
And we'll bring the landlord to court for kicking us out.
Talking points. And yeah, you can also try to maybe like do a practice run with the people that you're doing outreach with.
So I think one thing that helps is kind of like Yesenia said is organizing the tenants. Like it's really important for us to know who our neighbors are and know that we have each other's backs, because when it comes down to it, they're like your biggest defense and your biggest ally against that landlord, and you have a lot more power together being able to say no, we're not going to do this, than as individuals trying to take on the whole legal system. So.
Yeah, actually, if one of the organizers wants to talk about, like when we come across like a building where a lot of people are talking about the same conditions, the same issues with their housing conditions, I don't know if one of y'all wants to share about that. If anyone wants to share about when we come across like a building and there are several tenants in a building that are telling us the same thing, like price or housing conditions, issues like that. I think that's why it's important for people to organize tenants.
Yes, we have the city of Boston. If you have that issue, you could call ISD, and they can write violations on the landlord. And then he could be brought to court to correct those issues, whether you're paying rent or not. And he has to have a house in a livable condition. You know, a lot of people don't utilize those services, but they do have those services available. It's called ISD, Inspection Services. It's basically a part of the city of Boston. It's at 1010 Mass Ave. So if you have a condition where you have mice, roaches, or whatever, and the landlord's not addressing that issue, you call the inspectors out and they take pictures and document it. Even if a smoke detector or carbon monoxide detector is not working, anything that should be working should be working. And if it's not working, he's responsible for fixing it.
I wonder how much that works, because there are landlords that are like on a list, that the city has identified them as problem landlords.
Well, then they're probably in court right now. They should be in court right now. If they're not, bring them to court. Let me know. I bring them to court myself.
I think the issue with ISD sometimes is that for issues like mice, they need to be there and see the mice to believe you.
No, all they got to do is see the drop-ins, and that's enough.
Well, I think in general, though, like, ISD is definitely there as a resource to help people, and, like, you know exactly what you're saying. But I also think, like, it's a city institution, and ultimately, at the end of the day, sometimes your issues aren't going to be able to.
Well, if that doesn't work, you call your local news, and then you put it on you call Channel 5 and Channel 7. Yeah, you can do that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is that sometimes
You call the Board of Health if it's that bad.
I mean, sometimes people might say, but my landlord is nice, or they're worried about straining their relationship with their landlord, because the other thing that happens is like, they retaliate against them.
They're not supposed to be able to do that. If they do, then that's a serious problem too. But you're right, they will try to do that. If they cut your electricity off and all that kind of crazy stuff, that's illegal. They can't do that.
They're in communication with some people that, like their landlord is doing exactly that. They're like, I'm gonna raise the rent and don't talk to me, talk to my lawyer.
We can also send a letter to the government to fix the situation, to let people stay, even though they don't have money, they can stay.
Definitely, and I think like if in that situation, probably getting people behind you, right? Not going as an individual, but going as like an organized body. Because they ignore one person, but it'll be harder to ignore a group of people.
Yeah, and send a letter to the president to let him know that people need a place to stay.
One thing I noticed too, a lot of landlords either they're too afraid to reach out or they don't have the resources to fix up their house the right way. So they're left not doing it, or they're hiring people who are not qualified to do the work. And that's a lot that goes on in the city of Boston as well. So maybe the landlord might need some resources to direct him in the right direction too. Because he may be trying to do it, but he's not able to do it. Like you said, there are some good landlords out there that are trying, but they just don't have the right resources.
That's
I
kind of,
think,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that is a big thing with like small landlords, not necessarily like, you know, the big developers or whatever, but like the smaller landlords, do need resources. A lot of them do depend on like that rent for their own housing. So, you know, there has to be protections in place for like them as well to be able to maintain their own living situations.
Plus, people need to survive too. Even though they don't have enough money for the water bill, they should still have water, should still have going for them.
Definitely.
Yeah.
There should definitely be those protections. There's also, I mean, that's one of the reasons why the extended slogan is cancel the rents and mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
So that would cover small landlords too.
So there's one example I can give. We're organizing with a tenant locally who lives in a 3-family. She's been there for 14 years. Up until the last 2 years, she's had a good relationship with her landlord. Landlord's an elderly woman on the first floor, and this tenant is on the second floor, and then there's a new tenant, a new family on the third floor. And the rent was stable for many years, and then last year the landlord raised the rent several $100s.
Wow.
And then this year, just recently, $500. It went from $1,300 to $1,800. So
that's a lot.
As I said, we're organizing with that tenant, and myself and another organizer met with her a couple weeks ago, and then talked to the new third floor tenant, who this tenant didn't really know before, but now they have a relationship, and what she subsequently found out is that the landlord already raised the rent 1 month into the month-to-month tenancy, like it's not even a lease, it's just a tenancy, you know, has already raised his rent after the first month. I think it was $50. So, of course, he's impacted now, so that's just a small example of tenants organizing together, and there is strength in numbers, you know. And I think from what we've experienced is that tenants feel more comfortable to take those steps, because it can be obviously really scary when they know there's a group of organizers behind them, you know, backing them up.
And let them know about the Boston Liberation Center.
Have you worked with any groups that live in like the DA properties? So live in different like housing projects? A lot of my students live in like the Bunker Hill project right by the school, and we kind of hear the same kinds of things about neglect and like inadequate living situations, and I guess like the city is kind of their landlord.
Is that Boston Housing you're talking about? BHA?
Yeah.
Oh wow, yeah.
I think I gave you the wrong letters.
Yeah, well, yeah, they have a track record of being kind of bad landlords, so that's kind of like run by the state, so it's kind of yeah.
A lot of people do metro housing in Boston. And it's similar, yeah, like just so much backlog caused by, or rather exacerbated by COVID, but usually like very understaffed. People should have like a case manager, advocacy in terms of living conditions. There's like a department, an inspections department that goes and advocates on behalf of their clients, really. Yeah, just like nothing, nothing is happening.
I think the question of public housing is really important too, because before COVID, the biggest evictor in the city was the Boston Housing Authority. So, like it should be like somewhere that you can live affordably, and where people should have a right to housing, but they're getting kicked out more than anybody, and the conditions are just so bad. And people kind of they think it's like, oh, it's the project, so it should be like that. But it is like the government that is your landlord, and we see all the things the government spends money on. Like there's obviously like Afghanistan is just in the news now, and how much money was just like drained into that war for 20 straight years. When it's like we could just be rebuilding like public housing and making it actually adequate. So I think, sometimes people just like accept the quality of public housing as just like it's automatically bad, and we should really fight against that and fight for like the adequate resources for people in public housing for sure.
Come through, let us know what you're coming through, meeting up, and always, use
Well,
this
again, thank you all for joining today
You guys have any more
on this
questions
rainy
before we
day.
wrap up?
We really appreciate it, and I look forward to connecting with all of you. I think there's gonna be pizza to go. If y'all want some pizza.
Do you want these chairs back? How they were?
Eventually, yeah. I think they're closing out real quick, right?
All right. So next steps. Actually, I don't know why I'm off in the front. Like, there's no need. Y'all can hear me. So yeah. Next steps, let's organize some of these neighborhood outreach sessions. Like I said, let us know if you have any questions about how to get this done. If you need some practice one-on-one, if you're going to try to make some time for that. We can do it over the phone or Zoom or whatever works best for folks. We're gonna, working on, a next community meeting, try to figure out some dates. We're also gonna have Cancel the Rents National Day of Action, Saturday, September 24th at 1 p.m. at Nubian Station. We've been holding demos at Nubian Station for months now, getting people, spreading the word about who we are and the importance of building people power. So hopefully, we'll get to see a lot of y'all and bring your friends, families, co-workers, neighbors, and let's really do like a show out to make sure that, people know that we got their back at a time of crisis like this. And next slide.
What's that?
Oh, I thought okay, so there's no invite for the next one. All right, so next, we're gonna hold, the forum, basically portion of this, where folks are gonna get to talk.
We just did that.
What's that?
We just did that.
Oh, we just did that. I don't know why. Long day, long day. I got kicked out of a Lyft because the Lyft driver got into an emergency, so my mind is old. It's been a very, very long day. We just had, I was just participating. All right, so just to really wake us up, maybe I'm being selfish, wake me up, I need another chant. Is that okay with y'all?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Mass evictions, that ain't right.
Housing is a human right.
I remembered. I was scared. I'm second y'all not gonna remember. But, all right, let's do it a few more times. Mass evictions, that ain't right.
Housing is a human right.
Mass evictions, that ain't right.
Housing is a human right.
Woo! All right, clap. All right, so we got pizza in the back. We're gonna try to figure out a way to get everybody. We just gotta grab some tin foil so we can wrap up some plates. Due to COVID precautions and the fact that the weather is so crappy outside, we really couldn't figure out a way to get folks to eat in here, unfortunately. But we are gonna make sure that if you want pizza, we can, wrap some up, put it on the plates to go. I know y'all hungry, y'all been here, y'all deserve some food and to get energized. I think Rachel's gonna be coming out with the wrapping foil to set us up. So yes, if you don't follow us on social media, definitely look out for Cancel the Rents Boston on Instagram. and on Facebook. We should have flyers in here anyways around with, so if you need to have more information, let me know and I can grab you a flyer that has like all social media and some of our contact information, so you can follow us on there if you aren't already. And like I said before, and I'm sure, both sides, we're talking about this, let's stay connected. Let's make sure that this is the beginning of a conversation, just in terms between ourselves, but also meaning that we're gonna extend this conversation into more people, get more people involved, get more people, riled up and ready to fight. So thanks everybody for coming.
Oh, thanks.